I want to tell you about the 14 months I spent in Caliche, Nevada. Population 209 when I arrived. 206 when I left. I'm not going to explain what happened to those 3 people because I don't fully know, and the parts one do know aren't things I can say with the kind of certainty you'd want from someone telling you a story like this. What I can tell you is what I saw, what I was told, and what I did on the night of March 11th when the siren went off for 11 minutes and 14 seconds and I was the only person in town who didn't go inside. But I need to start earlier than that. I moved to Caliche in January of the previous year. I was 34, recently divorced, and had taken a remote position managing logistics for a lithium extraction company whose nearest operational site was 40 miles northeast. My job was spreadsheets, equipment tracking, vendor coordination. All digital. I needed to live within a 90-minute drive of the site for occasional in-person meetings, and Caliche was the cheapest option by far. A $600 a month rental on a half-dead street called Mineral Way. 2-bedroom stucco box with a gravel yard and a broken swamp cooler I fixed myself the first week. The town sat in a long shallow basin between 2 ridgelines of dark volcanic rock. 1 gas station, 1 bar called the Leach Pad, 1 post office that doubled as the town clerk's office, 1 elementary school that served 11 kids bussed in from surrounding ranches. A fire station staffed by volunteers. A water tower. A cell tower. The usual bones of a place that exists because someone found something in the ground 100 years ago and people just never fully left. I liked it. I liked the silence. I liked that nobody asked me about my marriage or my plans. I liked that the cashier at the gas station, a woman named Darlene with skin like cured leather, just nodded at me after the 3rd week like I'd always been there. I liked that the mountains changed color 4 times a day and that at night the sky was so thick with stars it looked geological, like sediment layers of light. The siren was the first thing I noticed that didn't fit. It was mounted on a pole behind the fire station, a standard civil defense model, the kind you'd see in any small town for tornado warnings or volunteer firefighter alerts. But Caliche had no tornadoes. It had no weather emergencies of any kind. The basin was too low and sheltered for high winds. Flash floods were possible in theory, but the arroyos ran well east of the town proper. And the volunteer fire department had a phone tree and a group text chain. They didn't need a siren. I asked Darlene about it my 2nd month there. She was restocking cigarettes behind the counter and didn't look up. Test siren, she said. Once a month. For what? For testing. I waited for more, but she just kept stacking packs of Marlboros in neat rows, and that was the end of it. The first time I heard it was a Tuesday in late February, around 11 in the morning. A single tone, rising and falling, not especially loud for my house but clearly audible. It lasted about 45 seconds. I was on a video call and muted myself, stepped to the window, watched the empty street. Nothing happened. No one came out. No one moved. The siren faded and the silence returned like water filling a hole. Normal enough. Small towns test their sirens. I noted it and moved on. But the second time wasn't a month later. It was 9 days later. A Thursday. Around 2 in the afternoon. The same tone, maybe 30 seconds. I was in my yard trying to get the hose bib to stop leaking and I stood up and looked around. Across the street, my neighbor Hal Everett was on his porch, and when the siren started he got up immediately, went inside, and closed his door. Not urgently. Not panicked. Just promptly. Like a man who hears a timer go off and knows what it means. When the siren stopped, maybe 40 seconds later, his door opened again. He came back out with his coffee and sat down like nothing had happened. I walked over. Hal was in his 70s, a retired BLM surveyor, one of the few people in town who'd actually talked to me beyond transactional pleasantries. "What was that about?" I asked. "Siren test. You went inside." He looked at me over his mug. His eyes were pale blue, almost colorless, and in the Nevada sun they looked like water in a white bowl. "Habit," he said. "Hear the siren, go inside. Been doing it 40 years. Why? Because that's what you do." He said it simply. Not evasively, not with any weight. Like he was explaining why you take your boots off at the door. I didn't push it. I figured it was some old civil defense holdover, a cultural fossil from the Cold War era when the Nevada test site was still setting off bombs 100 miles northwest, and maybe there was a real reason once to get behind walls when you heard that sound. If you're listening to this at night, if you're the kind of person who stays up with these stories because the quiet hours are when your mind wants to chew on things like this, you can subscribe to this channel. I don't say that lightly. I'm telling you this because I haven't told many people, and the ones I have don't drive through Nevada anymore. The third siren came 6 days after the second. A Saturday morning, just before 8. I was making coffee and the sound came in through the kitchen window, muffled by glass. I watched the street. Within 10 seconds, every visible door on Mineral Way was closed. The Garcia's truck was running in their driveway, engine idling, driver's door open, and no one was in it. They'd gone inside mid-departure. The siren ran for maybe 50 seconds and stopped. Within a minute, the Garcia's door opened, Mr. Garcia came out, got in his truck, and drove away like he'd just paused to grab his wallet. I started paying attention to the intervals. The fourth siren came 5 days later. The fifth, 3 days after that. The sixth, the next day. They were accelerating. No one talked about it. I asked Hal again, and he gave me the same answer with slightly less patience. I asked Darlene, and she said, "Yep, test siren," without eye contact. I asked the bartender at the leach pad, a heavy guy named Cleet who'd been friendlier than most, and he set my beer down a little harder than usual and said, "Town runs the siren, people go inside. That's it." But why? What's it testing? "It's testing whether people go inside," he said, and then he went to the other end of the bar. I tried to frame it rationally. Maybe there was a gas line issue. Maybe the lithium operation leaked chemicals periodically and this was an informal shelter-in-place protocol. Maybe there was a military exercise pattern from nearby ranges. All of these explanations had holes, but I kept them around because the alternative, that 200 people collectively performed an action they couldn't or wouldn't explain, was harder to sit with. By March, the siren was sounding every other day. Sometimes at night. Always between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. Always the same single tone. And every time, the town sealed itself up like a wound closing. Lights went off. Doors shut. Cars pulled over. I watched from my window, from my yard, from the gas station parking lot. I was always the only person still visible. No one said anything to me about it. No one warned me. No one told me I should be going inside too. That was the part that started to bother me. In early March, I drove the 40 minutes to the extraction site for a quarterly meeting and afterward found myself in conversation with my supervisor, a woman named Priya who managed remote personnel across 3 sites. I asked her, carefully, whether she knew anything about civil defense protocols in Kalichi. She frowned. Like what? There's a siren. Goes off regularly. The whole town goes indoors. Huh, she said. I mean, it's Nevada. There's weird military stuff everywhere. Probably a test range notification. There's no test range within 100 miles. Then I don't know. Ask the county. I did. I called the Nye County Emergency Management Office the next day. A clerk named Thomas answered. I explained what I was observing, the siren, the frequency, the town's collective response. There was a pause. Sir, what town did you say? Kalichi. A longer pause. I heard typing. I don't have any active siren protocol registered for Kalichi. We have them for Tonopah, Beatty, Pahrump. Not Kalichi. It's definitely there. It's on a pole behind the fire station. Could be a legacy installation. Unregistered. You'd have to ask the local fire chief. The local fire chief was a rancher named Don Villanueva who lived 6 miles outside town and whom I'd met exactly once. I drove out to his place on a Saturday. He was mending fence. He was polite, reserved, sun-darkened. Oh, the siren. Yeah. That's been there since before I was born. Who operates it? It's automatic. Automatic based on what? What triggers it? He pulled a wire tight, stapled it. Didn't look at me. Couldn't tell you. I've never seen a control panel for it. It just goes. And everyone goes inside. Yep. Why? He straightened up, pushed his head back, looked at me with something that wasn't hostility but wasn't warmth either. Something evaluative. My dad taught me that when the siren sounds, you go inside and you stay away from windows. His dad taught him the same thing. I never asked why because it never seemed like the kind of question that needed an answer. Has anything ever happened to someone who didn't go inside? He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, I don't know anyone who hasn't gone inside. I drove home thinking about that. Not the content of the answer but the construction of it. He didn't say nothing happens. He said he didn't know anyone who'd tested it. Which meant either everyone always complied, or the ones who didn't weren't around to report back. I started documenting. I logged every siren event in a spreadsheet, date, time, duration, weather conditions, anything I observed during and after. I'll give you the data from March 1 to 6:47 a.m., 38 seconds. March 2 to 11:15 p.m., 52 seconds. March 4 to 3:33 p.m., 41 seconds. March 5 to 3:30 a.m., 67 seconds, woke me up. March 7 to 9:12 a.m., 44 seconds. March 8 to 9:14 a.m., 49 seconds. March 9 to 2 p.m., 71 seconds. March 9 to 11:58 p.m., 55 seconds. March 10th, multiple, 7 a.m., 12:30 p.m., 4:15 p.m., 9:40 p.m., all between 35 to 60 seconds. They were accelerating again. Clustering. And on March 10th, I noticed something I hadn't before. During the 4:15 p.m. siren, I was outside in my yard, watching the street as usual. Every house sealed up on cue. Hal's door closed. The Garcias blinds dropped. The street went dead. And in that silence, I heard something. Not the siren was still going, but beneath it. A lower sound. Not mechanical. Not exactly organic either. Something between a hum and a vibration, felt more than heard, like standing too close to a power line but directional, coming from somewhere south of town, out past the last row of houses toward the open basin floor. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then the siren stopped, and the sound stopped with it, or I lost it in the ambient return of wind and distance. I checked my phone. I'd been recording audio of the sirens for the past week. I played back the 4:15 recording. The siren was there. Clear. And beneath it, on the waveform, a second frequency. Low. Steady. Not a harmonic of the siren, a separate signal. March 10th, 9:40 p.m. I was outside again. Deliberately. Standing in the middle of Mineral Way with my phone recording and my ears open. The siren started and the town closed like a fist. This time the undersound was clearer. Louder. It came from the south, from the basin. A pulsing low tone that didn't waver but seemed to breathe, swelling slightly, then receding, then swelling again. Like something very large was respiring. And in the gap between one siren cycle and the next, that half-second where the mechanical tone dipped before rising again, I heard something else. A voice. Not words. Not language I could identify. But structured sound from a single source, with cadence, with rhythm. Rising at the ends of phrases like questions. The siren stopped. Everything stopped. I stood in the street with my phone still recording and my skin prickling in the cold desert night. I played it back. I could hear it on the recording. Faintly, buried in the siren's acoustic shadow, but there. A voice. Asking something. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and headphones and processed the audio through spectral analysis software I downloaded, Audacity, then a more specialized tool called Sonic Visualizer. The voice was between 85 and 120 Hz. Human vocal range, technically. But the consistency was wrong. A human voice fluctuates, trembles, breathes. This was steady as a sine wave with inflection layered on top, like someone had taken a machine tone and taught it to ask questions. The next morning I walked south. Past the last house on the last street, out onto the basin floor. The ground was alkali flat, pale as bone, cracked in irregular polygons. The air was still. I walked for 20 minutes, maybe a mile, until the town was a low smudge behind me. There was nothing out there. No structures, no equipment, no obvious source for a sound. Just flat white ground stretching to the ridgeline. I knelt and put my hand on the surface. It was cold. Damp underneath, which surprised me. The top layer was powder dry, but an inch down the soil was dark and cool to the touch. I dug a little with my hands. 6 inches down, the soil changed color abruptly. Dark reddish-brown, almost like clay, and warm. Not sun-warm. Internally warm. Like putting your hand on an animal's flank. I pulled my hands out and wiped them on my jeans. I stood up and looked around. Nothing. Just flat, silent desert. But I had the feeling, irrational, persistent, that the ground was aware of the weight of me standing on it. I went home. I showered. I worked. The siren went off at noon and again at 3. I went inside both times. I don't know why. I just did. It felt like the thing to do. That night at the leach pad, I sat at the bar and waited until Cleet had a free minute. It was a Wednesday and the place was nearly empty, 2 old ranchers playing cards in the corner, a woman I didn't recognize drinking wine alone by the jukebox. "Cleet," I said. "I need you to tell me something real." He looked at me. Wiped a glass. Set it down. "The siren isn't a test. It's a signal. Something out in the basin makes a sound and the siren covers it. Or warns people about it. Which is it?" He didn't deny it. He didn't deflect. He just looked at me with that evaluative expression I'd seen on Don Villanueva, on Hal, on Darlene, the expression that wasn't hostility but wasn't welcome either. A measurement being taken. "You've been outside during them," he said. "Yes. Every time." "Most." He nodded slowly. "Put both hands flat on the bar. Then it knows you're there." My throat went dry. "What does?" "I don't have a name for it." "Nobody does. My grandmother called it La Cosa del Piso. The thing in the floor. My mother just called it the reason. My dad called it nothing at all because he said naming it was talking to it." "What does it do?" "It calls. It's been calling since before the town was here. The siren was put up in 1957 because enough people heard it that someone had to do something. The sound covers it. If you're inside with the doors closed and the siren going, you can't hear it. If you can't hear it, it can't find you." "Find you how?" Cleet picked up another glass and started polishing it, and his hands were steady, and his voice was steady, and nothing about him suggested he was lying or performing. He spoke like a man describing the location of a septic tank. People who listen to it go walking. Not right away. Maybe that night, maybe the next night. They get up and they walk south and they don't come back. Happened twice when I was a kid. Happened once about 10 years ago. A traveler, passing through. Someone just disappeared. Walked out into the basin. They found his shoes at the edge of the flat, lined up neat. Nothing else. I thought about the warm soil 6 inches down. I thought about the voice asking questions. Why didn't anyone tell me? Cleet set the glass down. Because you're an adult. Because the siren goes off and everyone goes inside and any reasonable person would do what everyone else does. You're the first person in 30 years who stood outside and listened. I went home and locked my door and lay in bed in the dark. I didn't sleep. I heard the house settling, the wind outside, the distant hum of the cell tower. Normal sounds. Identifiable sounds. At 3:47 a.m. the siren went off. I pulled the covers over my head like a child. 43 seconds. I counted. And beneath the siren, through the walls and the pillow and my own controlled breathing, I could hear it. The voice. Asking. When it stopped, I lay there and noticed something. I wanted to get up. Not because I was scared or restless. I wanted to get up and walk outside and stand in the street and listen. It was a physical urge, like thirst. Like the impulse to stretch after sitting too long. My legs wanted to move south. I stayed in bed. I didn't move. But the want didn't go away. It sat in my muscles all night like a charge waiting to discharge. The next morning, March 11th, I called in sick to work and went to Hal's house. He answered the door in pajamas and a bathrobe, annoyed. I know about the voice, I said. I know what the siren's for. I need you to tell me what happens now. He stared at me. Then he stepped aside and let me in. His house smelled like old coffee and wood smoke and mentholated cream. We sat at his kitchen table. He didn't offer me anything to drink. You heard it, he said. Not a question. Multiple times. I was outside for most of the sirens this month. He closed his eyes. Rubbed his face with both hands. How many times? I don't know. 15. 20. Jesus Christ. What? It's cumulative, he said. Every time you hear it, it gets a little more pull. Like a current. First time's nothing. 5th time you might dream about it. 10th time you start wanting to walk. 20th time, he stopped. Opened his eyes. Looked at me with something I hadn't seen in him before. Fear. Genuine fear. Not for himself. Do you want to walk right now? He asked. I paused. Checked my body. My legs were still. My mind was clear. The morning sun was coming through Hal's kitchen window, warm and yellow. No, I said. Not right now. At night. I hesitated. A little, I said. Last night. He nodded. You need to leave. What? Leave Kalichi. Today. Pack a bag and drive away and don't come back. The farther you get from the basin, the less pull it has. 100 miles and you won't feel it. 200 and you'll forget it was ever real. I have a lease. I have a job. You have legs that want to walk you into the desert and you won't come back. I sat there in Hal's kitchen and felt the weight of that. The 3 people, I said. The ones who disappeared. 2 of them were locals who did what you did. Stayed outside during a siren one too many times. The 3rd was the traveler Cleet mentioned. Camped at the edge of town for a week. Heard it every time. And they walked. They walked. At night. Alone. And the basin took them. Took them where? Down, Hal said. Into the warm. I drove home. I started packing. I told myself I was being rational, being smart. I filled 2 suitcases and loaded them in my truck. I called my landlord and said I'd be breaking my lease. He didn't ask why. He just said okay. But I didn't leave. I told myself it was because I needed to clean the house, return the keys, cancel the mail. Practical reasons. But by noon I was sitting on my couch doing nothing, and the suitcases were in the truck, and my keys were on the counter, and I was still there. The siren went off at 12:30. I went to the window. I went outside. I didn't decide to. I just did it. One moment I was at the window and the next I was standing on my porch in the sunlight with the siren wailing and the street empty and my ears open. The voice was immediate. Not faint, not buried. Clear. Present. It was beneath the siren like a hand beneath a glove, and it was saying something, and I almost understood it. Not the words, there were no words, but the meaning. The shape of what it was asking. It was asking if I was ready. The siren stopped. The voice stopped. I was standing on my porch with my hands at my sides and my truck was right there and the highway was 5 minutes away and I could leave. I went back inside. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at my hands. They were shaking. Not from fear. From effort. Like I'd been gripping something tightly. I called Hal. No answer. I called Cleet at the bar. He picked up on the fifth ring. I'm still here, I said. I went outside during the noon siren. I almost understood it. Silence on the line. Then. Are you in your truck? No. I'm in my house. Get in your truck. I'm going to. Right now. Not in an hour. Not after dinner. Now. I know. I know. I will. I didn't. The afternoon passed. I sat in my house and watched the light move across the floor, and I felt fine. Normal. Clear. I told myself the morning's urgency was overblown. Hal was an old man with old superstitions. Cleet was a bartender in a dying town with nothing better to hold onto than local folklore. The siren was strange, but I was an adult, a rational person, and I was not going to walk into the desert because a low-frequency sound gave me an impulse I could clearly identify and clearly resist. The sun set. The sky went purple, then orange, then black. Stars emerged in their thousands. I made dinner. I ate it. I washed the dishes. Normal. Fine. 9:40 p.m. The siren. I was in the kitchen and I felt it start before I heard it, a resonance in my chest, a pre-echo, like the sound existed before the siren gave it permission to be audible. I went to the back door. Opened it. Stepped into the yard. The siren wailed over the rooftops, but I barely heard it because the voice was so clear now, so present, so direct. It was not beneath the siren anymore. It was alongside it. Equal to it. And it was not asking if I was ready. It was telling me where. Specific. Directional. South-southwest, maybe a mile, maybe less. A precise location in the basin. A place where the ground was warm and the soil was red, and something was waiting with vast, ancient, geological patience for me to come and stand on the place where the sound came from and listen with my full attention, finally, without the siren between us, without walls, without distance. My feet were in the gravel. I was off the porch. I was walking. I stopped. It took everything I had. Every muscle in my legs was pulling forward, and I planted them and stopped and stood in my yard with my hands balled into fists, and I said, out loud, no. The siren stopped. The voice stopped. I stood in the dark trembling. Then Hal was there. Coming across the street in his bathrobe and slippers, moving fast for a 70-year-old man, and he grabbed my arm, physically grabbed me, and pulled me back toward my house. Inside, he said. Inside, inside, inside. He got me through the door and closed it behind us and locked it and stood there breathing hard. You were walking, he said. I stopped. You were 10 feet from the street. Another minute and you'd have been past the houses. I sat down on the floor because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. Not from exhaustion. From the effort of not using them. Hal sat across from me on a kitchen chair and watched me with those pale, washed-out eyes. Tomorrow morning, he said. First light. I'll follow you to the highway in my truck. You drive and you don't stop until you hit Tonopah and you don't come back. Okay. Not okay. Promise me. I promise. He stayed with me that night. Slept on my couch. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and felt the pull in my legs like a tide pulling at sand. It didn't stop. It pulsed with my heartbeat. South. South. The warm. The voice. The answer to the question I wasn't asking. I didn't sleep. 3:30 a.m. The siren went off. Hal was up instantly. I heard him move, heard my front door, checking the lock. The siren was loud and long, maybe a full minute, and through it I lay in bed and listened, and this time I heard something new. Not the voice. Footsteps. Outside. On the street. Slow, steady footsteps moving south. I got up and went to the window, and Hal was there in the living room saying, don't look, but I looked. A man was walking down Mineral Way. I couldn't see his face, he was 50 yards out and it was dark, but I could see his shape, his gait, his direction. South. Unhurried. Certain. Who is that? I whispered. Hal didn't answer. I looked at him and his face was gray. Hal. That's Terry Macon. Lives on Agate Street. Good man. Worked at the mine for 30 years. He's outside. He's walking. We watched. Terry Macon walked to the end of Mineral Way, past the last house, onto the basin floor. His shape got smaller and smaller against the white ground until the dark swallowed him entirely. The siren stopped. Hal sat down heavily on my couch and put his head in his hands. That's 3, he said quietly. 3 what? 3 since you moved here. You're not the only one who stood outside. You're just the only one who stopped. At first light, I got in my truck. Hal was in his, idling behind me. I pulled onto the highway heading north toward Tonopah. My legs ached. Every mile I drove, the ache lessened slightly, like a cramp releasing. By the time I hit US 6 the feeling was a memory. By Tonopah it was abstract, a fact I knew but couldn't feel. I checked into a motel. I slept for 14 hours. When I woke up, I called Hal to tell him I was safe. He didn't answer. I tried 3 times that day and once the next morning. Nothing. I called Cleet. Hal's fine, Cleet said. He's just not answering his phone. Can you check on him? A pause. I'll check. Cleet called back an hour later. He's home. He's fine. He said to tell you not to call anymore. Why? He said you'd understand. I didn't. Not then. But I think I do now. I think Hal was afraid that maintaining contact with me maintained a thread. That whatever the voice had mapped of me, my patterns, my relationships, my connections to the town, could be followed back along those lines. That knowing me was a risk. I stayed in Tonopah for a week, then drove to Reno, then eventually down to Carson City where I rented an apartment. I still worked the same job. Still remote. Still spreadsheets and vendor calls. Normal life. But I want to tell you about one more thing. 6 weeks after I left, late April, I was in my apartment in Carson City. It was just past midnight. I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on. I woke up, not startled, just awake, and the first thing I noticed was that I was standing. Not on the couch. Standing. In my kitchen. Facing south. My front door was open. I had no memory of getting up. No memory of walking to the kitchen. No memory of unlocking and opening the door. But there I was, in boxers and a t-shirt, bare feet on the tile, facing the open door and the parking lot beyond it and the desert beyond that, the long southern darkness stretching back toward the basin, toward Kalichi, toward the warm ground and the voice that asked and asked and asked. I closed the door. Locked it. Deadbolted it. Went back to bed. It's happened 4 more times since then. Always at night. Always I wake up standing, facing south, closer to the door each time. Twice the door was open. Once I was outside, on the walkway, 3 steps from the stairs. Carson City is 180 miles from Kalichi. Hal said 100 miles and you won't feel it. 200 and you'll forget it was real. Hal was wrong. I don't feel it during the day. I don't hear it when I'm awake. But something in me is still listening. Something in my body still knows the direction, still answers when it's called, still walks when my conscious mind is down. I've started sleeping with the deadbolt key around my neck. I've started blocking my door with a chair. I've considered moving farther away, to Oregon, to Washington, to another state entirely. But I keep thinking about what Hal said, about the 3 who disappeared since I moved there. About Terry Macon walking south in the dark without hesitation, without resistance, with the same calm certainty you'd use to walk into your own home. I wonder if Terry fought it. I wonder if he had months of waking up standing, facing the right direction, getting closer each time. I wonder if there was a version of him that locked his doors and blocked his exits and thought he was managing it. I wonder how long that worked. I wonder if distance is actually a factor at all, or if Hal just told me that because having me leave was the only thing that protected the town from having another walker on their street, another set of footsteps heading south in the middle of the night, another neighbor they'd have to watch disappear. March 11th. 11 minutes and 14 seconds. That was the last siren I heard before I left. I timed it because it was the longest one by far. 11 minutes. Every other siren had been under 2 minutes. 11 minutes of the town sealed inside their houses while that sound rolled out of the basin and filled the streets and asked its questions to anyone still listening. Terry walked during that siren. I almost did. I've been looking at the math. The sirens were accelerating before I left. Daily. Multiple times daily. If the pattern continued, and I have no reason to think it didn't, then by now, by the time you're hearing this, the siren in Kalichi would be nearly continuous. Hours at a time. Maybe all night. And I think about what that means. If the siren's purpose is to cover the voice, and the voice is getting longer, then either the thing in the basin is getting louder, or it's getting closer to the surface, or it's almost done asking. And I think about what happens to a town of 200 people when the siren can no longer run long enough to cover what's underneath. When the mechanism fails or the power goes out or the signal simply isn't loud enough anymore. When the voice comes through clear and the whole town hears it at once, not just the strays like me who stood outside and let it in. I think about Hal in his bathrobe. About Darlene restocking cigarettes. About the Garcias getting into their truck. About the 11 children at the elementary school. All of them sealed behind their walls, trusting the siren to hold, trusting the ritual to work, trusting that going inside is enough. I hope it is. But the thing is, and this is what I lie awake thinking about, the siren was put up in 1957. That's almost 70 years of covering, of masking, of drowning out the voice. 70 years of the voice getting longer. It hasn't stopped. It hasn't given up. It hasn't moved on. It's been asking the same question for 70 years and it's patient in a way that nothing alive should be patient, and I don't think it's going to stop until someone answers. And 3 nights ago, in my apartment in Carson City, I woke up at 4 a.m. standing at my open door, barefoot on the concrete walkway, facing south. My car keys were in my hand. I don't remember picking them up. I don't know how long I'd been standing there. I don't know if I'd already tried to drive. I put the keys in a lockbox. Combination lock. I change the combination every morning because I read that fine motor tasks are harder to perform unconsciously. But I don't actually know that. I don't know what I'm capable of when I'm not awake. I don't know what's operating my body in those hours. I don't know if it's me, sleepwalking toward a memory of sound, or if it's the part of me that already answered, that already said yes during one of those 20 sirens I stood outside for, that has been walking slowly, patiently, impossibly south every night for months while the rest of me thinks it's sleeping safely in bed. I don't know which one of me is telling you this. I don't know if the one who wakes up and locks the door is winning. I just know that the distance between Carson City and Kalichi is 180 miles, and that last night I woke up and my odometer was 11 miles higher than I remembered, and I was in my car, parked on the shoulder of Highway 95 South, engine running, headlights on, alone in the dark desert, and I don't know how long I'd been driving. 169 miles to go. At this rate, I have about 16 nights left. I'm telling you this because I want a record. I want someone to know that I tried. That I fought it. That I went inside when I understood what was happening. That I left when I was told to leave. That I did everything right, eventually, and it still wasn't enough because I'd already listened too many times, and once you've heard it enough, the part of you that answers doesn't need your permission anymore. If you ever pass through the basin country of central Nevada and you hear a siren, go inside. Don't stand in the street. Don't listen for what's underneath. Don't try to understand it. Just go inside and wait and hope the sound is loud enough to cover what's calling. Because if you hear the voice clearly, even once, if you hear what it's asking and you understand the shape of the question, then some part of you will answer. Not today. Maybe not for months. But eventually, on some night you won't remember, your legs will carry you south toward the warm ground, and you will walk calmly and certainly into a place where no one has ever returned from, and the last conscious thing you'll feel is the ground opening beneath your feet like something that has been holding its breath for 70 years, finally exhaling. I leave the TV on now. All night. Volume up. White noise machines in every room. Anything to fill the silence where the voice might reach me. I sleep in my closet with the door locked from inside, a configuration I had a locksmith install specifically so I can't wander. But I still wake up standing. And last night the closet door was open. From inside. I don't know how much longer this works. I just want someone to know I was here. That was 3 weeks ago. That's when I recorded the first part of what you just heard. I put it on a flash drive and mailed it to a college friend in Portland with a note that said, "If I stop answering my phone, post this somewhere people will hear it." A dead man's switch. An insurance policy against the version of me that drives south without asking permission. But I'm still here. Still in Carson City. Still fighting it. And I have more to tell you now because in the 3 weeks since I recorded that, things have changed in ways I need to document while I still can. The first change was practical. After the closet door incident, I installed a camera. A simple wireless unit, motion activated, pointed at my closet door from across the bedroom. I set it to record to a cloud server so even if something happened to the camera, the footage would persist. The first 6 nights, nothing. I woke up inside the closet every morning. The camera showed nothing because I hadn't moved. I'd stayed in there the whole night. Good. The lock was holding. Whatever mechanism was operating me in sleep couldn't manage the deadbolt from inside. Night 7. April 14th. I reviewed the footage at breakfast. 2:47 a.m. The closet door opens. From inside. I watch myself, and it is profoundly strange to watch yourself do something you have no memory of doing. I watch myself step out of the closet in my boxers and a t-shirt and stand in the middle of my bedroom. Eyes open. Not squinting, not blinking. Open and fixed, staring south through the wall as if the wall were not there. I stand there for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Then I walk to my apartment door. I unlock the deadbolt. I open the door. I step outside onto the walkway. The camera's angle catches the door but not the walkway. I disappear from frame at 2:51 a.m. I reappear at 3:38 a.m. 47 minutes. I walk back in, close the door, lock it, return to the closet, close the closet door, and lie down. I woke up at 7 a.m. with no memory of any of it. The closet door was closed. The front door was locked. If I hadn't had the camera, I would never have known. 47 minutes. Where did I go? I checked my car. The odometer was the same. So I hadn't driven. I'd walked. I put on shoes and walked south from my apartment at a normal pace and timed how far I could get in 23 minutes, half of the 47, assuming a round trip. 1.4 miles. I reached a stretch of empty road on the southern edge of the commercial district, past a closed hardware store and a storage facility. Nothing there. Nothing visible. But the direction was right. Due south. Toward Highway 95. Toward the basin. I watched the footage from the next 5 nights. Every night between 2:30 and 3 a.m., I left. Every night I was gone between 40 and 50 minutes. Every night I returned, locked up, went back to the closet. On night 12, April 19th, I tried something different. I set an alarm for 2:15 a.m. The idea was to be awake when the walking started, to catch myself in the transition, to feel what it felt like when the other part of me took over. 2:15 a.m. Alarm goes off. I'm awake. Alert. Sitting up in the closet, back against the wall. Heart pounding. Aware. 2:20 a.m. Still awake. Still me. 2:25 a.m. A sensation begins in my calves. Not a cramp. More like a warming. Like blood moving faster, being directed downward, pooling in preparation. 2:30 a.m. My feet flex. I don't tell them to flex. They flex inside my shoes. I'd started sleeping in sneakers, and the balls of my feet press against the soles like they're testing the ground. 2:33 a.m. I stand up. I didn't decide to stand up. I'm conscious. I'm aware. I'm awake and thinking and observing, and I stand up without choosing to. My legs extend and my weight shifts and I'm vertical and my hand is reaching for the closet door and I am watching my hand do this and I cannot stop it. It's not like paralysis. I can feel my body. I can feel my muscles engaging. It's more like, and I don't have a better way to describe this, it's like being a passenger in a car that's driving itself. You're in the seat. You can see the road. You can feel the motion. But the steering wheel is moving without you. I opened the closet door. I walked through my bedroom. I unlocked the front door. I stepped outside into the cold April night. And then I was walking south. My mind was screaming. Every cognitive process I had was firing. Stop, stop, stop. This is it. This is what happened to Terry Macon. This is how it ends. Stop. And my legs kept moving. Steady pace. Unhurried. Certain. I counted steps. I tried to track landmarks. I was on the walkway, then the parking lot, then the sidewalk along Roop Street, then cutting through the empty lot behind the auto parts store, then onto a dirt shoulder heading south along the commercial strip. My body navigated as if it had done this many times before. It had. 12 times that I knew of. Probably more before I installed the camera. I fought. I threw everything I had at my legs, at my muscles, at whatever autonomic system was overriding my voluntary control. I managed to slow my pace. I managed, once, to stop my right foot mid-stride, holding it in the air for nearly 2 seconds before it came down and kept going. 2 seconds of resistance for 12 seconds of compliance. I was not winning. But then, and I don't know why, I don't have an explanation for this, at approximately the 20-minute mark, while I was walking past the storage facility on the southern edge of town, my body stopped. Not because I stopped it. It just stopped. Like reaching the end of a permitted range. Like a dog hitting the end of its chain. I stood there in the dark, facing south, for approximately 4 minutes. My eyes were fixed on the horizon, on the dark line where the valley floor met the sky, far out past the city lights, past the ranches, past everything, toward the place 180 miles away where the ground was warm. Then I turned around and walked home. The same pace. The same certainty. The same absence of choice. My body carried me back to my apartment, through the door, to the closet, and lay me down like a child being put to bed. And then I was myself again. Fully. Completely. Motor control returned like a light switching on. I could move my hands, turn my head, choose my actions. I lay there gasping, drenched in sweat, and I understood something that I need you to understand. The walking is practice. It's not trying to get me to Kalichi in a single night. It's not that crude. It's building a route. A neural pathway. A habit so deep it doesn't require consciousness. Every night it takes me a little farther south, and every night it returns me, and every night the pathway gets smoother, more automatic, more permanent. It's training my body the way you'd train a muscle. Repetition. 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 Until one night the chain reaches far enough that it doesn't need to bring me back. I called a sleep specialist the next day. Dr. Renna at the Nevada Sleep Institute. I told her I was having severe sleepwalking episodes, complex somnambulism, that I was leaving my apartment unconsciously and walking significant distances. I did not tell her about Kalichi or the siren or the voice. I just told her the clinical symptoms. She scheduled me for a polysomnography study. Overnight in their lab, wired up, monitored. April 23rd. I checked in at 8 p.m. A technician named David attached 23 electrodes to my scalp, face, and chest. EEG, EOG, EMG, pulse oximetry, the full array. I lay in their clinical bed in their monitored room and tried to sleep. I couldn't. I lay awake until nearly midnight, aware of the wires, the camera, the red light on the ceiling, the faint sounds of the building. I finally slept around 12:30. I woke up at 6 a.m. in the bed, wires still attached, room unchanged. David came in, told me the study was done, they'd have results in a week. Normal process. Dr. Renna called me 5 days later. Your study showed some unusual findings, she said. Her voice was careful. Professional neutral with a crease in it. What kind of unusual? At 2:41 a.m., your EEG showed a transition into what we'd classify as slow-wave sleep, the deepest non-REM stage. This is the stage most associated with complex somnambulism, so it's consistent with your reported symptoms. Okay. But the pattern is atypical. Normally in slow-wave sleep, the delta waves are generalized across the cortex. In your case, the delta activity was concentrated almost exclusively in the motor cortex and the posterior parietal region, areas associated with spatial navigation and voluntary movement. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex showed activation patterns more consistent with wakefulness. I didn't say anything. In other words, the parts of your brain responsible for movement and spatial orientation were in their deepest sleep state, essentially operating below conscious control, while the parts responsible for awareness and decision-making were active. I've seen something similar in a few case studies related to dissociative states, but the clarity of the division in your scan is unusual. What does that mean? It means some part of your brain is awake while another part is acting independently. The walking isn't a sleep behavior in the traditional sense. It's more like your motor system enters an autonomous mode while your higher cognition continues to function. They're just not communicating. Can you treat it? We can try clonazepam, which suppresses slow-wave sleep transitions. I want to schedule a follow-up study. And I'd recommend keeping a sleep diary and continuing to use your home camera. I didn't tell her that the motor system isn't autonomous. That it has a destination. That it's being called. She prescribed the clonazepam. For 3 nights it worked. I stayed in the closet, the camera showed no movement. I thought I'd found a pharmacological wall against the thing that was walking me south. Night 4 on the medication. April 30th. I reviewed the morning footage. 2:38 a.m. The closet door opens. I step out. Eyes open. Fixed south. I walk to the front door, unlock it, step outside. Gone for 53 minutes. Longer than before. The clonazepam wasn't suppressing the transition. It was suppressing my awareness of the transition. I was still walking. I just couldn't wake up during it anymore. I stopped taking the medication immediately. May 1st. I made a decision. I drove to a hardware store and I bought a heavy-duty hasp, a padlock, and a 3-foot length of chain. I went home and I installed the hasp on the outside of my closet door. That night, I asked my downstairs neighbor, a retired woman named Patricia who was home most evenings, if she would do me a strange favor. I told her I had a severe sleepwalking condition. I told her my doctor recommended being physically secured at night. I asked if she would come up at 10 p.m. each night, after I was in the closet, and padlock the hasp from outside. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said yes. That night Patricia came up at 10, I showed her the hasp, she closed the closet door and snapped the padlock shut. She held the key. I was inside, locked in, physically incapable of leaving without breaking through a door that I could not open from inside. I slept. I woke up at 7 a.m. Called Patricia. She came up, unlocked the closet, Let me out. I checked the camera footage. 2:44 a.m. Sounds from inside the closet. Shuffling. Then a steady, rhythmic pushing against the door. Not violent. Patient. A measured pressure applied, released, applied, released. For 19 minutes. Then silence. It worked. For 6 nights the routine held. Patricia locked me in. The footage showed attempts, always between 2:30 and 3 a.m., but the hasp held. I was contained. Night 7. May 8th. I reviewed the footage at breakfast. Everything normal until 2:40 a.m. Then, sounds from the closet. The familiar pushing. But this time, at 2:52 a.m., I can hear something else on the audio. My voice. From inside the closet, I am speaking. Not words I recognize. Not English. Not any language. A low, rhythmic vocalization at the bottom of my register. Monotone but with inflection at the ends of phrases. Rising. Questioning. The same cadence as the voice from the basin. I am making the sound. My throat, my vocal cords, my breath. I am reproducing the signal. And on the footage, at 2:54 a.m., I can hear something else. A response. From outside the building. Faint. Low. Almost subsonic. Coming from the south. They are talking to each other. Through me. I am a relay. I called Hal. I know I said I wouldn't. I know he told me not to. But I called and this time he answered. Hal, I said. I need to ask you something and I need you to answer honestly. Silence. Then, very quietly, you're still hearing it. I'm transmitting it. In my sleep. I'm making the sound. A long, long pause. Then it's further along than I thought. Further along toward what? When Marie Coulter walked, this was the first one, 1994, they found her tracks on the basin floor. Measured them. The stride length was wrong. Too long for her body. Like something else was using her legs and didn't know the right proportions. What does that mean? It means it doesn't just call you out there. It learns to move you. First it walks you. Then it talks through you. Then it. He stopped. Then what, Hal? I don't know. Nobody's been around long enough at this stage for anyone to know. Marie walked on her 9th night of vocalizing. The Traveler walked on his 5th. Terry walked on his 2nd. I've been vocalizing for 1 night. That you know of. Check your camera from previous nights. Check the audio. I went back through the footage. Every night since the camera was installed. I amplified the audio, ran it through the spectral analyzer. Night 3. Faint vocalization from inside the closet. Barely audible. 20 seconds. Night 5. Longer. 40 seconds. Clearer. The cadence unmistakable. Night 8. 2 minutes of sustained vocalization. And on the spectral display, below the range of human hearing, a responding signal from outside the building. I had been transmitting for weeks. The closet muffled it. The camera barely picked it up. But it was there on every recording, growing longer, growing louder, growing more precise. The training was never just about my legs. It was about my voice. I'm building a bridge. Every night my body walks south to extend the range, and every night my voice calls down to confirm the signal, and every night the thing in the basin answers to calibrate the connection. I am being tuned like an instrument, stretched like a wire between 2 points that are getting closer together. I went to see Dr. Rena again. Told her about the vocalizations. She was concerned, parasomnia with complex vocalizations, possible REM behavior disorder overlap. She wanted another sleep study. I agreed because I wanted data. May 12th. The second polysomnography. Same room, same wires, same red light. This time I slept quickly. Exhaustion. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and David was standing in the doorway of the sleep room looking at me with an expression I can only describe as professional alarm controlled by training. "Mr. Harlan," he said. "How do you feel?" "Fine." "Why? Do you remember anything from the night?" "No." He nodded. Left. Dr. Rena called me that afternoon. "I need to see you in my office," she said. "Today if possible." I went. She sat me down. She had my EEG printout in front of her, pages and pages of waveform data. At 2:38 a.m., she said, "Your brain activity changed. The same motor cortex pattern as before, deep slow wave, isolated, operating independently. But this time we also saw activation in Broca's area and the laryngeal motor cortex consistent with speech production. You were vocalizing." "I know. It's happened at home." The vocalization lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. "I have the audio." She played it. My voice. From the clinical recording. Low, rhythmic, rising at the ends of phrases. The sound from the basin. Reproduced perfectly by my sleeping body in a monitored medical facility 180 miles from the source. But that's not what made Dr. Rena's hands tremble slightly as she handled the printout. At 2:42 a.m., she said, "4 minutes into your vocalization, the seismometer in our building's basement, it's for structural monitoring, part of the earthquake preparedness system, registered a low-frequency vibration. 0.7 Hz. It lasted the same duration as your remaining vocalization and stopped when you stopped." She looked at me. "The building responded to you. Or something beneath the building responded to you. I don't know how to interpret that clinically. What are you going to do?" "I'm referring you to a neurologist. And I'm going to be honest with you, what I'm seeing doesn't fit a known sleep disorder profile. The motor isolation, the speech production, the environmental response. I've never encountered this combination. I didn't go to the neurologist. There wasn't a point. This isn't a neurological problem. My brain isn't malfunctioning. It's functioning exactly as it's been repurposed to function. It's a relay. A transceiver. A voice in the network. It's May 6th now. I'm recording this addition to the first file. Tomorrow I'm going to mail this updated version to my friend in Portland. Here's where things stand. The nightly walks have extended to 1 hour and 40 minutes. The range has grown. I found mud on my shoes last Tuesday, red-brown clay, the kind that doesn't exist in Carson City's geology. The kind that exists in the basin. That's impossible. The basin is 180 miles away. I cannot walk 180 miles in 100 minutes. But the mud was there. Under my fingernails too. And warm. Still warm at 6 a.m. I don't think distance works the way it should anymore. Not for me. Not in the hours when the other part is driving. The vocalizations have changed. Patricia told me, she still locks me in every night, and now she wears earplugs because, she said, the sound you make gives me bad dreams. She told me that last Thursday night she could hear me from her apartment below. Through the floor. Through her earplugs. She said it sounded like I was answering questions. She asked if I wanted her to stop locking me in. I said no. Please, God, no. But this morning when she let me out of the closet, she paused. She was looking at the padlock in her hand. This was warm, she said. The metal. It was warm to the touch. I looked at the closet door. The interior surface, painted white pressboard, had condensation on it. Not from my breath. The droplets were forming from the outside in. The door was cold on the hallway side and warm on the closet side, and the warmth was coming from below, up through the floor, into the small sealed space where I spend my nights calling into the ground. It's coming up to meet me. It's not waiting for me to walk all the way there anymore. The basin is moving. Or the warm is spreading. Or the thing underneath is so close to the surface now that 180 miles of rock and soil and distance is just a formality, a membrane getting thinner every night I press my voice against it. I have maybe a week. Maybe less. I base that on the rate of change, the walks getting longer, the vocalizations getting stronger, the warmth rising through the floor. Patricia won't keep doing this much longer. She's scared. I can see it in how fast she leaves after unlocking the door each morning, how she doesn't look at me directly anymore. When she stops, the closet will be unlocked. And on that night, I will walk out and I will not come back. Or maybe it won't matter whether the closet is locked or not. Maybe the warm will come all the way up through the floor and the floor will open the way the basin opened for Terry Macon and Marie Coulter and the traveler whose name nobody remembers, and I will go down instead of south, and the last thing I'll feel is the ground closing over me like water over a stone. I'm not asking for help. There's no help for this. I listened 20 times and the listening was the agreement and the agreement was permanent and everything since then has been the slow execution of a contract I signed with my eardrums. I just want someone to know. If I disappear, I didn't choose it. The thing that walks me chose it a long time ago and has been patient enough to build the road one night at a time. If the town of Caliche, Nevada goes quiet, if one day the siren stops running because there's no one left to hear it, you'll know why. And if you ever hear a sound, low and rhythmic, rising at the ends of phrases like questions, from below you, from the ground, from the infrastructure, from the deep geological patience of the earth, don't answer. Don't even listen. Because listening is answering. And answering is walking. And walking is arriving. And arriving is the last thing you do while you're still the one who decides what your body does. The floor of my closet is warm tonight. Patricia left the key on my doormat instead of waiting for morning. The padlock is in my hand. I don't remember picking it up.